You know the NFL draft is coming soon when the combine happened. This past weekend, all the top prospects for this year's draft class lifted their weights, did their drills, and ran their 40-yard dashes. Every year there's always some player, especially at the wide receiver spot, who runs a historic time, gets close to a historic time, or makes his draft stock go insane. The same thing happened this time around, as we have now found our speedster for the 2024 class, Xavier Worthy. He should now probably become a first-round pick, but what's interesting is he probably should have been a first-round pick regardless. He's been one of the best receivers in all of college football, has always had game-changing speed, and was for some reason being slept on. In today's video, I'm going to introduce you to who Xavier Worthy is. We're going to talk about the story behind the player who just had the historic 40-yard dash time, go through his crazy recruitment, which involved him signing with Michigan but then leaving for Texas in the middle of the offseason, and then how he became a superstar for Texas. I'm also going to be joined by my buddy Andrew from Saturday Shenanigans, as he's also going to talk about why he's so hyped up and what kind of impact he had in college. Before we get started, if you're a big fan of college football, especially NFL draft content, be sure to subscribe to the channel, leave a like if you're going to support today's video, and let me know what player or prospect I should cover in my next one. Now let's get started and talk about the insane rise of Xavier Worthy. In order to understand how Worthy got to this point, we first need to go back in time. In 5th grade, Worthy would try cross country for the first time. He grew up in Fresno, California, and while he played all sports, he signed up for this one and didn't like how much running was required. At the championship meet, he would end up finishing second, which actually made him really mad. His mom said, quote, he came home with his medal and was really mad. He promised that he would win the next race, and that is exactly what he would do in 6th grade. Besides running, football was always a big deal to him, as in youth football, they called him Flash. He was named after the DC comic superhero, and he said, quote, I wore Flash cleats and had gloves, towels, and socks and everything. Xavier was always a big-time athlete and was seen as the next big thing in the Fresno area, and at 12 years old, everyone knew how legit he was. He placed top 10 at the Junior Olympics in the 100 meter, 200 meter, and the long jump. Eventually, he would arrive at Central East High School in Fresno and had 10 catches as a sophomore. At the time, he was the backup to future Cal wide receiver Jeremiah Hunter, and he was determined to outwork Jeremiah. He wanted to get better and utilize his speed to become a big-time recruit. This would end up happening, except it was a little bit slow. His first scholarship offer was San Jose State, and that would come before his junior year. He'd end up having his breakout season as he caught 54 passes for 992 yards and 16 touchdowns. This put him in the thick of it for the best receiver in the class of 2021, and he also helped lead his school to a first ever state championship in 2019. As I said, he was one of the fastest players in the class of 2021, as he ran a 10.55 100-meter dash. He then became the fastest rising receiver in the nation, and by the end of March, he went from a 3-star recruit to a guy who, quote, had Harbaugh, Saban, Cristobal, and Deion Sanders on his phone. This made him a huge deal, but because of the landscape in the world in 2020, he could not visit schools in person or even meet with coaches. He had to do it all online and in a very weird, unorthodox way. But who ended up winning it? Well, the schools that were recruiting him the hardest were Michigan, Oregon, and Washington, and he said it was actually a good thing that he couldn't make visits because they had to do more research. I don't know if he meant that, but I guess it makes sense. Michigan would eventually become the front runner, and that was because of their staff, their offensive system, and he had a lot of family in the area. But it wasn't all sunshine and rainbows for him. He said, quote, it was stressful. I'm not gonna lie, all these offers and these coaches texting me every day, it was hard. While Michigan did seem to be the front runner, it was by no means a lock. As National Signing Day approached, he was considered an Oregon lean, but apparently they had a falling out at the last minute. He ended up signing with Michigan on National Signing Day and chose them over Alabama. Now that he had all his recruitment over, he was now going to focus on his senior year of football, which was moved to the spring. Ultimately, he decided to opt out of that, but trouble was brewing on the horizon, which then leads to the craziest part of his story. At a place like Michigan, it is a must that you should be good in the classroom, and especially if you want to be able to enroll early. His mom said, quote, when he first picked Michigan, Worthy planned on being an early enrollee. His school district didn't allow seniors to graduate early, so his mom got creative. She got him enrolled in a virtual school for the fall of 2020, and when he met with guidance counselors, he was ensured that his schedule met all the graduation and NCAA eligibility requirements. As he was ready to enroll early at Michigan, he even had an apartment lined up, but 2 weeks before this would happen, there was a problem that emerged. Michigan had super strict admission standards for mid-year guys, and one former staffer said he was not able to get him admitted into the school. It was based on his academic profile, and they told him he'd have to come in June. His mother and Xavier were absolutely stunned, and at that point, they had lost trust in Michigan. Because of Michigan's inability to give Worthy a chance, they ended up losing him. One comment on a Michigan site says it perfectly. He said, quote, it seems to be a no-brainer to give this kid an opportunity to excel at football and in the classroom. But Michigan doesn't seem interested in helping students who aren't the typical high academic achievers. Why not take a chance on a kid, and if he can't make it, you let him go? Instead, he's seen as a number on a spreadsheet and told no thanks. More than that, they ended up losing him. Eventually, he decided to ask out of his national letter of intent and ended up signing with Texas. This happened just a week after he decommitted, and he said things didn't work out at Michigan because, quote, due to circumstances beyond my control, things did not go as planned for me. During the recruiting process, Worthy developed a close relationship with Steve Sarkisian, and while he was the OC at Bama, he almost landed Worthy. But now that he was at Texas, he knew exactly where he was going. Scouts were super high on Xavier, as they said, quote, at 6'1" and 160 pounds, Worthy is built like Heisman Trophy winner Devontae Smith and is known as a vertical threat, but also for his ability to run routes like a more seasoned player and create yards after the catch. According to 24/7 Sports, Worthy was a 4-star player, the number 8 receiver, and the 62nd best player in the class of 2021. He had a ton of hype and already started taking advantage of the new NIL laws in college football. Before taking his first snap, he signed an NIL deal at orangebloods.com and even launched his own clothing line. This was all before he even played a snap for Texas. When he arrived at Texas, he got a ton of instant hype and attention, as Bijan Robinson said he was like Jerry Jeudy. Roshan Johnson said he'll have a huge impact right away. The biggest compliment, though, came from defensive lineman Keandre Coburn, as he said, quote, that dude right there is another Tyreek Hill in college. So, Xavier was absolutely hyped up, but how would he end up doing at Texas? Now I'm going to turn it over to Andrew, and he's going to talk about his college career and his record-breaking combine performance.
Just because you're a 4-star recruit coming out of high school, that doesn't mean anything's guaranteed in college. We've seen time and time again highly touted players fizzle out at the next level. But Xavier Worthy was not one of those players. Texas football was entering a new era in the 2021 season with head coach Steve Sarkisian, and there was a lot of unknown for the fan base and the team, including the question of who was going to step up and play the role of the leading target for quarterbacks Hudson Card and Casey Thompson. Initially, it didn't look like it was going to be a true freshman Xavier Worthy. In the first 2 games of the season versus Louisiana and Arkansas, Worthy had only 3 combined receptions. They were big gains though, which Longhorn fans would soon be accustomed to seeing, because after game 3 against Rice, Xavier Worthy started to turn up and he never looked back. He had 6 receptions for 71 yards along with his first collegiate touchdown in a win. In the very next game, he put up 100 receiving yards with a monster 3 touchdowns versus Texas Tech. And his most memorable moment of 2021 was when he put on a show in the Red River rivalry against Oklahoma. What better way to gain respect and love from the Texas fans than dominating your hated rivals? Although Texas fell short, Worthy went for a staggering 261 yards on 9 catches, which was a school record as a freshman. He also had 2 touchdowns. The Longhorns had a year that they weren't proud of, a 5-7 record, but they knew they had a future star at wide receiver. Worthy finished with 981 yards, 62 receptions, and 12 touchdowns, leading the Longhorns wide receivers in every category. He collected a truckload of accolades in 2021, including the Big 12 Offensive Freshman of the Year, the Sean Alexander Freshman of the Year award finalist, while being selected to the All Big 12 first team and being named a Freshman All-American by multiple websites. Xavier trusted Coach Steve Sarkisian's vision, and he knew if he stuck around with his talent, great things were bound to happen for the program. In 2022, his sophomore year, Worthy obviously had some hype going into it, for good reason. He was named as preseason All Big 12 and second-team All-American. He had another great season, but if you just look at the numbers, you'll realize they declined from his freshman year. But again, numbers don't tell the entire story. 760 yards on 60 receptions and 9 touchdowns, which is not bad by any stretch of the imagination. No, this wasn't because his actual game was regressing, it's just because the team around him had gotten better. The other wide receivers such as Jordan Whittington and Jatavion Sanders were threats as well. All 3 of these players had 600 or more receiving yards on the year. Plus, the talented quarterback Quinn Ewers was able to efficiently distribute the ball to more of his weapons than the 2021 QBs. So Xavier wasn't the only one getting love. Despite all of this, Worthy was named as second-team All-Big 12, and he became the fastest Longhorn to 100 career receptions. His best game that year was against West Virginia with 7 catches, 119 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a win. Speaking of winning, Texas did a much better job at that in 2022 compared to 2021, as they went 8-5, with 4 of those losses coming to ranked teams by only 1 score or less. It was clear to see what Sark was building, and if the Longhorns wanted to take the next step as a legitimate college football playoff contender in the next year, they would need their big play wide receiver to show up yet again. 2023, junior year for Xavier Worthy, this would be the time to make that big leap in his NFL draft stock. But no one was thinking about this because Texas had a team with the talent to go all the way, and they proved it in week 2 with a gutsy road win in Tuscaloosa against Alabama. Worthy had a huge 44-yard touchdown reception to help them win that game, and he also had another 100-plus yard performance in the Red River rivalry. Later in the season, he put up 137 yards on 10 catches against TCU in November. Unfortunately for Worthy and Texas, he got injured before the Longhorns' college football playoff semifinal matchup against Washington. He wasn't able to play at 100%, but he was still able to put up a 38-yard reception from Ewers. Texas lost, but this was their best season since 2009, and Worthy was there from the jump in the Sarkisian rebuild. He had some ridiculous stats in 2023, including a career-high 75 receptions, which was the 7th most in a season in school history, a career-high in yards at 1,014, 5 touchdowns, which is good considering he wasn't a red zone threat, and a 74-yard punt return touchdown while averaging 16.9 yards per return, which was the 2nd best in program history. It's safe to say that Xavier Worthy etched his mark into Texas Longhorn football history. After the conclusion of the 2023 college football season, Xavier Worthy decided to forego his senior season in Austin and declare for the NFL draft. In early 2024 NFL draft projections, Worthy was slated as a late 2nd-round pick, which you might think is crazy considering he was the top wide receiver on one of the best teams in the country, but this can all be credited to his size and frame. He's just 5'11 and 165 pounds, and this can scare a lot of scouts. We all knew Worthy to be one of the most electrifying players in college, with his elite speed and explosiveness, but there were a lot of people who didn't understand just how crazy it truly was. Yes, I know guys, this is probably the exact reason you watched this video in the first place. The entire football world turned upside down after Xavier Worthy broke the NFL record for the fastest 40-yard dash ever recorded at the Combine. 4.21 seconds. 4.21. I'm going to let that sit. That is just freaky. Now his stock has skyrocketed to projected first-round status. Some experts believe he may even be the 4th wide receiver selected off the board. If you told scouts this just a few weeks ago, they would have thought you were crazy. Xavier Worthy, the fastest player ever. But will he make it in the pros? As always, Scott, thanks so much for having me on.
Once again, I appreciate Andrew coming on for today's video. I think he's the next big college football YouTuber, and he's a great guy behind the screen, so be sure to check out his channel, and also check out the collab we recently did on Brendan Rice. But for Xavier Worthy, all of this is insane. He was always a gifted runner, but now his name is etched in Combine history. That's a great place to be. I remember John Ross going from just a solid prospect to a top 10 pick just because of his Combine performance. 2 years ago, we saw the same thing happen with Tyquan Thornton, and it looks like Xavier Worthy is next. There's pretty much nothing he can't do, and now knowing the adversity he battled and that injury he had in 2022 makes things even crazier. I think Worthy will be a great tool in the NFL and will be a household name very soon. But what do you guys think? If you're a Texas or an NFL fan, what do you think of Xavier Worthy? What do you think of his NFL future? And what draft prospect should I cover next? Be sure to let me know down below. Leave a like if you want to support today's video, subscribe if you're new, and check out all of the videos on the end screen. Hope to see you guys again soon, but until next time, peace.